want higher? We'll give you higher.
Hi, it's Catherine Gray. Can you hear me?
Yes, good evening.
Is Nitya in the room or is Nitya calling in?
It seems like they are joining us here on Zoom. I see a couple of folks online.
Okay, because I could
we're all
run
on
across the street. You're all on Zoom? Okay, then I'm gonna stay on Zoom.
Right.
Nice to meet everyone.
Likewise, thank you. Thank you all so very much for joining us. We'll start in just about a minute. I'm still wait for our chair to come in. Okay. All right. All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to call to order. We're at 6:41. In terms of the agenda, I would like to make an amendment to hear a presentation from fudge. Yeah, here we go. An amendment change would be adding onto presentations from Urban Resource Institute on a proposed supportive housing development over on 129 between Convent and Amsterdam. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second. I can second.
There's no opposition.
All right, all those in favor? All right. Do I have a motion to adopt the minutes from May?
Not really without a quorum.
No, we have a quorum. We're only down to 7 people.
Really?
So we got 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Oh, we got a king.
Okay.
Makes it so much easier to count when we
Yeah.
have so few people.
Are we going to be getting new people?
Yes.
Yeah, although I don't think the list is
It's
gone
not
out
until like
yet.
September, right?
Right.
Yeah. All right. Motion to adopt the minutes.
So moved.
All right. All in favor? Any oppositions? All right. All right. So, good evening, everyone. Moving to introductions, my name is Mateen Sarsi. I'm co-chair of the Housing, Land Use, and Zoning Committee, and I'll pass the ball over to David.
And I'm David Ratner, and I am the other co-chair of the Housing, Land Use, and Zoning Committee. Victor?
Good evening, my name is Victor Edwards. I'm the chair of the board here at CB9.
Good evening, I'm Alexander Schmiedis, and I am a committee member of the Housing, Land Use, and Zoning Committee.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Rhea McDonald, and I'm also a committee member.
And Signe Mortensen, public member of the Housing, Land Use, and Zoning Committee.
Awesome. Thank you. So before we move on, I don't have any updates on 1727 Amsterdam, particularly for this item. The thing I'm waiting for at this point is for the land disposition agreement to get uploaded onto Acris. Once it does, I'll be able to make a printout, keep for our records, and then kind of see what we ended up with, as a final project. It'll give us a good hint for what went through, what we can plan for the next ULURP, and learning from those steps. But as of right now, that's the only update I have there.
What is the land disposition?
Yeah, so this would be the agreement that specifies the terms for getting rid of 1727 Amsterdam.
Okay.
So they have to put down the different steps that they took throughout the process. So they have to record what they did here with ULURP and then the final closing costs and stuff like that. So they would have done this way back when in 2018 originally, but they had to have a hearing right before just so that they could take in any testimony and then put in any of those needed updates. The cool thing that HPD did with us was they actually gave us a kind of a boilerplate LDA so that we could have an idea of which are those blank spots so that next time things come around we know exactly where we need to tap in. So it gives us a little bit of leverage for the next go around, just knowing what HPD looks for, what needs to get filled, and where we could hopefully insert ourselves. But yeah, that's all I have on that. David, do you have anything on 620 West 153rd?
Well, let me just ask, is there anybody here from the Borough President's Office? I don't imagine there is, but before I badmouth the Borough President's Office, I want to make sure that nobody was on. I would, badmouth is not the right word. I was told that their Housing Land Use Council was going to be setting up a meeting, variously told that it was going to be 3 weeks ago, then 2 weeks ago, and when it finally was scheduled, apparently their council thought it was on a different topic, so the whole meeting came to nothing. The 30-day period for bringing a challenge, an Article 78 challenge, to BSA's determination has passed. So I think we're now in the period of looking back and trying to learn as many lessons from this experience as we can. Unfortunately, that's all I have to say on the matter.
Do you think there's still room for negotiations with the developer as far as givebacks at all?
I don't know why the developer would agree to talk to us. Looking at the Board of Standard Appeals rules and regulations, they can revisit this at any time.
BSA.
BSA can revisit it. I don't think the current BSA as constituted is likely to use their time to revisit this particular decision. I think if Mayor Mamdani appoints a different group, it might be worth.
Might be something we want to explore on our own, just to put it out there. This is what we've done on our own, to reach out and see what happens. Nothing might not, but sometimes,
Yeah. Listen, I think this should not have happened the way that it happened. It did. I don't think there was a loss of life, but I think that. Part of what happened, quite frankly, is the transition, thanks to Council Member Abreu, between the old Housing Land Use Committee and this one. I'm not going to speak for the team, but it took me a while to even understand what was going on and how it should be best handled. And I think that just took too long. And I will, I will take responsibility for that. As I say, I think there are lessons that we've learned from this.
Okay. Fair enough.
Fair enough. Tiffany, I saw your hand up earlier.
So you said the statute of limitations for Article 78 has passed for which development?
Yeah, generally in Article 78
please, sorry. For which development, which address?
we're now discussing 620 West 153rd Street, which is the too tall building that was built 14 stories above the legal height limit under the zoning.
Okay, yeah, I know that one very well, and I'm just trying to understand, because it's 4 months, right? 120 days, and how is it that?
Yeah,
we've discussed this extensively. I don't understand why, because now we're not getting anything. That is wild to me. I think
I'm sorry, Tiffany, I'm sorry, your speaker is a little bit muted, so it's
I'm gonna put it closer. So can you hear me better now? Is that better?
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah, great. No, I was just trying to understand, because we've been talking about this for a very long time, and I don't know how we've gotten to this point where it's 120 days, correct? Yeah,
No,
4 months.
that's incorrect. You're talking about the statute of limitations under the civil practice law and rule. Are you a lawyer, Tiffany?
It's an Article 78, isn't it 120 days though? That's the time that we have.
But every agency has the ability to
Right, I
shorten.
know. It's slightly different. So DHCR is much shorter. I understand that. But I'm
right.
just
But I'm sorry to interrupt you, but BSA has shortened it to 30 days.
wow.
Yeah, wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a drag, but that's what
Okay,
it
so
is.
last quick question. For 1728, 1728 Amsterdam, what's are we still in Euler? What are the next steps? What's happening there?
Right. So no,
Sorry,
at this
1727, not 1728, sorry.
right. Yeah. No. So with 1727, once HPD held its hearing specific on the
April.
the land disposition agreement. Essentially, we're now waiting for that document to be uploaded onto Acris, because it's going to be the only way that we're going to be able to pull it up and see if anything that we've done stuck.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Thanks.
once we do, the other thing that we have on that is we have boilerplate language on the LDA, so we know what part of the LDA is non-negotiable and what is ambiguous, and so we'll be able to do a bit of a compare and contrast, and then kind of see what if anything did our testimony have throughout the process. But this will record the Euler process. It'll record closing, and we'll know more once it comes out.
Okay, so are we still in ULURP right now?
No, not
Oh,
at this
oh,
point.
I'm sorry. It ended, you're saying April 15th is when it ended?
Well, I don't know if April 15 is the actual date. It depends on whenever the closing is. So like that's not something we're going to be privy to until we get that LDA.
So we still don't know when it's closed. Okay.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. Perfect. All right. One of the things I'm going to go over, and then let me see if I could put this here. Let me see. Share. Copy link. All right. So I'm going to drop into the chat. Boom. And let me see if I... open up the access. Okay. Share screen. Okay, perfect. All right, so one of the things that's kind of been happening every month is, I'm trying to see if I can zoom this thing out. There we go. One of the things that kind of been releasing every month, just to kind of like centralize different events and services that have come into the district. Either we get them through Youth and her team, or we get them through the overall community. But just having something a little bit of something for everybody who's doing housing. Every month, we've kind of created like a menu of events and services. So we have copies here, but I've also added the link to the chat, so you have access there. All the links are clickable, and if you're printing any of these out to share with friends, family, neighbors, the QR codes for any of the events go directly to the websites for the things that we're talking about. Just a note that there is no session in July and August, and as you go through this monthly resource list, it kind of covers a little bit of everything from what we have going on in the community board to what's happening, to what services and events are happening here in the district and what's offered. So that comes everything with DOB, city planning. There's something for homeowners, real estate agents, anybody who needs training with DOB training now. And then I got seniors, I got HDFC co-ops, and I got NYCHA. And we have upcoming city council hearings. So for any, actually tomorrow, for anybody who's attending, is going to be, this is going to be the open testimony starts at 9 p.m. over at City Hall. It's for all committees, so regardless of what you're trying to advocate for in the budget, that's going to be a big one for tomorrow. And then for anything that's happening for this month, we have Land Use Committee, we have Subcommittee on Landmarks, Public City Resilience and Dispositions, Zoning and Franchises, and of course the Public Housing Committee. So please feel free to share, and I'll end that there. Before we go on, as we're 3 minutes approaching to 7, I want to give a huge shout out to the New York City Housing Authority, who is joining us today. For full disclosure, for anyone who is in the know, I am a current employee of the New York City Housing Authority, so at 7 p.m. when they come to present, I'm going to step down as co-chair temporarily. I'll pass the baton over to David, and he will take over the meeting for the duration of NYCHA's presentation. So with that being said, I'm going to step down. David, I leave everything in your hands.
Okay. Let's all keep our voices down so Mateen doesn't hear any of this. All right, so this is something that we've been looking forward to for quite a while now. And we've asked NYCHA to present to us tonight on three topics. One is the project status of RAD Pact, which is a new program that is kind of a public-private partnership intended to, as I understand it, help with the huge backlog of repairs in public housing. The second topic is capital projects, specifically at the grand houses. And then to discuss the new neighborhood service coordinator position. Brent, we have Brent Schneider with us. I think you're taking the lead, if I'm correct, Brent. And
Yes.
I would ask you to introduce your team and to take it from here. And we've asked Brent to present for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then open the floor up to questions and discussions. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First, I would like to thank Community Board 9 for inviting us tonight to speak about projects that we are very proud of. Both these projects have successfully found ways to meaningfully invest in our developments. This investment will bring about improved living conditions and allow the residents to remain in their communities. My name is Brent Schneider, and I am a legislative coordinator in NYCHA's Government Relations Office. I focus on the entire borough of Manhattan, so if there's ever any sort of constituent issue, you can always feel free to reach out to me. And tonight I'm joined by my colleagues from NYCHA's Real Estate Department, our great neighborhood service coordinator for Grand Houses, and our PAC partners. In a moment, I will let them introduce themselves, but first I would like to briefly speak to the two PAC projects in Community Board 9. First, Audubon. Audubon houses closed in 2023 and consists of 167 units and approximately 450 residents. It was part of a 3-development bundle, which included 2 other developments in the neighboring Community Board 10, Marshall and Bethune, which brought in $166 million in new investment to cover physical improvements, which will enhance the quality of life for residents and improve the long-term financial viability of the properties. Improvements include building restoration, safety enhancements, and community space upgrades. There was also funding for an additional on-site social service provider for an array of support services, which will include, but won't be limited to, senior services, workforce development for new employment and career advancement, and financial literacy. Regarding Manhattanville, the Manhattanville PAC project will renovate 1,272 apartments and benefit the over 2,600 residents who call this development home. The scope of work was refined through a series of discussions with both residents, NYCHA, and the development team. The development team is responsible for ensuring comprehensive social services on site, working with existing providers and bringing in other organizations with expertise not already available to residents. And I do want to point out an elephant in the room, which, while we understand that there have been some challenges with this conversion, we ask that you reserve final judgment until the project is completed. This is not to make any excuses for any inconveniences caused by the construction, but it is to say that there's a lot of work to be done, and we are confident that things will only get better. And with that, I would like to introduce my colleague, Jim Shelton, who can speak more.
Hey everybody, good evening. Thanks for having me back. I think this is the 4th or 5th time I've, in various capacities, representing the real estate department. I've spoken to either the CB9 Housing and Land Use Committee or the Public Housing Committee. I work in our real estate department. I'm a planner there, and real estate, among other things, really stewards the pre-development and ultimately into the post-conversion phases of our PACT projects. So I know I was asked to just give a brief overview of 3 of the PACT projects in your community district boundaries. Brent teed up a little bit of the background, but I'll just quickly run through the 3 and kind of where they stand right now. So 1, Manhattanville Rehabs. This is 134th Street between Broadway and Amsterdam, directly north of Manhattanville. This was part of a larger bundle of what we call scattered non-campus sites that we call the Manhattan Bundle that went into the PACT program, converted to PACT as the terminology we use. In late November of 2020, there's 96 units in the buildings in your community district. That's the Manhattanville rehab portion of this larger Manhattan bundle. Monadnock, Kalel, and Lemoore Development are the JV, the joint venture who did the actual development work. Wavecrest manages the property. Since this converted in 2020, construction
Oh, you
here is
froze.
completed.
Jim, I don't know if you can hear us, but you're frozen.
I hear you. Do others have trouble hearing me?
Yeah, you froze for about, I would say, 15 seconds. So you might want to go back.
Okay. I was just describing the development team that undertook the pact conversion at Manhattanville Rehab. So it's Monadnock, Kalel, and Lemoore, and then Wavecrest is the property manager there. But I was just noting that since this project converted in 2020, the construction is complete. So this is now a project that has moved into kind of a stabilized status. It is not an active construction site. Audubon is the next one I'll just briefly review. As Brent mentioned, it's also part of a larger bundle of a few other developments. But Audubon, which is on Amsterdam and 155th, that moved into the PACT program in January 2023. 167 units at Audubon. Dantes was a developer there along with Faria, also a completed project. There's usually a 2 to 3 year, in some instances 4 years for larger, more complex projects, but that's usually a standard construction period. So this is also a project where they've moved into a stabilization phase. And then Manhattanville, which is just much larger in scale than those other two, and is, as you know, a campus style development with 6 very large buildings right across the street from your office. That only converted into the PACT program in late 2024. So while there is new property management there, the construction work is still very much midstream. It is an active, large-scale construction site. Gilbane, Apex, and West Harlem Group Assistance, that's the joint venture doing the work on that project. ELH is the property manager there, and Goddard Riverside provides social services as part of their team directly out of the development. In addition to, there's a number of on-site providers that remain there from their days working under NYCHA management. Construction there is about 35% complete. We expect completion of the construction in 2027. There's been some major building systems that have been completely completed or significantly underway at this point. The boiler plant, which was, really needed a lot of investment and was failing under NYCHA and was really just an old system, has been completely rebuilt here. So entering into next heat season, brand new rebuilt modern boiler plant. Elevator replacement and rehabilitation is underway here. These are 20-floor buildings. The elevators are critical here, and they're very, very old and breaking down frequently. So the elevator rehab is in progress. It's going to be a huge lift for the residents here. And you can see on the sides of the building, masonry work, repointing, window replacement, hazard abatement in those window lintels. And then there's also, what you can't see is apartment renovations are also happening simultaneously. Like the first about 85 units have been completely renovated. That's moving in waves, moving through lines, through buildings, happening in phases. So there's more than 1,100 apartments here. 85% have been renovated, 85 gross have been renovated, but more are underway. So this is, as I said, very much a complicated and active construction site. So that's just the high level overview of the progress status for those three. But everyone there's a representative from all. So as I mentioned, right, these are 3 different projects with 3 different development groups. And the representatives from all of those teams are here and can speak to any questions about the specific operations happening on their campuses.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I'm gonna go now to the Grant House's capital needs. So first, I want to talk about the current capital projects that are occurring at Grant Houses. There are four current projects, capital projects occurring right now. The first one is a gas riser project. That would include gas piping, new gas piping, enclosures, and distribution piping from the gas utility company valves to buildings as well as within buildings, installing fresh air and gas ventilation, and installing gas meter enclosures for outdoor locations. That's in the construction phase. It started in May of 2021, and it's anticipated to end on April of 2027. And that we were given 33,595,000 for that project. The second project is the laundry room. So this is going to include installing new laundry machines and associated equipment, installing upgraded electrical and plumbing lines, and repairing and replacing the walls and the floors. That one's all about 76% complete. It started in August of 2021 and it will be finished by the end of this year. And we were given about 3.5 million for that project. The next is a complete regroup of the heating system. So this will include installing new central heating plants, ground or air source heat pumps, gas boilers or high efficiency gas boilers, decoupling the space and water heating systems, installing circulating, condensing, and other pumps, um, and replacing the valves, piping, and traps. Everything to better improve the heating throughout the development. This is in the design phase. It's expected to go and start going into construction late this year, and it's anticipated end date of May 2028. And we were granted 26 million for that project. And last, we're going to. They're also redesigning the courts and in the Grant Park in Grant Houses Park. That's also in the design phase that will go into repairs starting in February 2028. Regarding other capital needs, Grant Houses has a 5-year capital need of 811,156,133, and a 20-year capital need of a little over 1 billion. The biggest areas of work remaining in the 20-year capital needs are our apartments in general, just renovating the apartments, which is 42%. Heating, which is going to be partially taken care of for the capital project that was granted to us earlier this year. Fixing the building exteriors and facades, which is about 13% of that 1 billion, and the plumbing issue, which is about 11%. I'm also going to include a couple of links. So in the chat, you can directly access updates on all of our capital projects through our capital project tracker on NYCHA's website, and I'm going to put that in the chat right now. And additionally, if you have an idea, if you want to discuss an idea that you guys might have, that if it is capitally eligible, I'm going to also give you the contact information for the manager of strategic partnerships, John White. He is the person to go to regarding all things capital project ideas, and in order to get it implemented in partnership with elected officials. So I'm going to put his contact information in the chat as well. And lastly, I'm going to, as the third issue was about the neighborhood service coordinator, and I'm going to introduce Ms. Sheree, who is the neighborhood service coordinator for Kings Tower, Grant, and St. Nicholas.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sheree Patomi. Thank you for having me here tonight. So I work as a neighborhood service coordinator for St. Nicholas, Grant, and King Towers. So my roles are to assist individual families with appropriate support programs like social service, health care, food assistance, transportation, employment programs. I also work as a liaison between the residents and property management. I work closely with the resident association with coordinated community events, outreach activities. I also assist with individuals with rental assistance and things that they need for the quality of life for the community, day-to-day operations.
Thank you, Sheree.
You're welcome.
We will now take any questions if you guys have.
I have a question. The laundry room. I don't know what's the purpose of the laundry room when you have laundry mats with laundry mats all around the neighborhood, you can repurpose that money towards something else like cameras in the buildings or around the complex, because a laundromat is not, it's not feasible. I remember Mark Levine back in early 2000, he had implemented a laundromat. We need doors, locked doors in our complex. I live at 430 West 125th Street. Our door's been open all year round, for any and anything to come into those doors. NYCHA needs to be held responsible. A laundromat is the least thing we need. We need safety. I know a home is a necessity and a human right, but once you have your home, you need safety. And 430 is not safe. I can't speak for the other buildings, but I can speak for mine. And I've been advocating for 430 since 2018 and going forward. So a laundromat, you can chop that. And what you can do is try to put some cameras and get some doors in those buildings that are tamper-proof, like they had down at Lexington Avenue, the borough office there. Now that borough office moved over to Drew Hamilton. Now I understand that Drew Hamilton have the necessities that we need. So a laundromat is the least of our worries. What we need is doors, locked doors. I have pictures, cameras, I have pictures of vagrants all throughout the building. I just left out of my building, coming out of the building, and the first floor reeks with urine. Because any and everybody can go in and out of that building, the rats included. Luckily, I'm on the 21st floor. But a laundromat, that's the least of our worry.
Thank you for your comment. I will say that the laundry room was funded by elected offices. What I can do is I can get a quote for cameras throughout grant houses, and I can provide that to this community board as well.
That's a necessity, totally. And I have and the circumference of the buildings, because I take pictures of everything. But NYCHA needs to be held accountable.
No, absolutely. And as a follow up, I will make sure I'll share with Community Board 9 the quote when I do receive it for cameras.
I appreciate it.
I have a couple of questions regarding Manhattanville. Hold on one second. The train's passing. I don't know if you can hear me. Under the new format you have there, under PAC RAD, one question I have, has evictions gone up under the new program? I asked that question. I'm a former housing authority employee, actually director from the Bronx at one time and Staten Island. And I was called about 2 months ago by a resident, the leader there, who asked me to come down and advocate. And I did. And she was several months behind because she hadn't signed a new lease, she hadn't recertified under Section 8, and she seemed a little bewildered about the whole process. So I'm just wondering, I know you have got at Riverside there, who does good work, but has the evictions gone up based on that, the new Section 8 as opposed to Section 9 program?
I can speak at a high level and then let the PAC team address specifics. But something that I'll share in general, I'll drop it in the chat, is there our data around evictions is public, and we have a tool that folks can look at any time for the PAC development. So I'll share that in the chat once I'm off the speaker position here, so that everyone has that as a resource. As a high level note, not signing a PAC lease, and I'll always repeat this at public meetings, definitely increases the likelihood, the risk that someone face eviction. The thing we always emphasize is signing a lease is not a requirement, but it is the thing that provides you with the right to be an authorized legal tenant of that apartment. And in the absence of of a lease, refusing to sign a lease for X, Y, and Z reason, certainly one outcome of that could be, legal action to remove you to remove an unauthorized tenant from an apartment. There are a lot of services, both provided directly by the PAC team, by Goddard, as you mentioned, but also referrals out to other services that we could always connect a tenant with. But I'll defer to the specific PAC team here to speak to that.
Okay. Secondly, you recently had a change in management. I went to the office to advocate for another resident to speak with the person who was in charge, and I was informed that person's no longer there. Unbeknownst to our office here, I don't know, were the residents notified in the change of management person?
You guys want to speak about the GM situation?
Yes. Ty Harris has left ELH management, and the property manager is now Priscilla Cruz. And notices have gone out to residents to that effect. She was the assistant property manager under Ty.
Okay, great. I was just a little surprised when I went to advocate once again.
And I would say for the tenant who's, part of the PACT program, I think Jim didn't mention it, is, PACT developers fund services from legal aid for residents that are not comfortable working directly with the property management company or the supportive service provider on site. So, they're referred to the range of resources that are available to advocate for them. We do everything possible to get people to sign leases, because that's what turns the subsidy on and helps keep the units affordable for them. So we can certainly talk offline at greater length about the tenant that you were trying to advocate for. Let's see if we can figure out what's going wrong.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Tiffany has her hand.
Tiffany.
Tiffany, do you have your hand up? Am I correct?
Can you guys hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, much better.
What sort of outreach was done to NYCHA residents at all of these complexes that you just mentioned so that they could attend tonight's meeting? There's a lady in the audience, I apologize, I've forgotten your name, but I understand you're a resident of one of the complexes. Who else on the call or who else in person is a NYCHA resident? And again, my question primarily is, what outreach was done to residences of Grant, of Manhattanville, of all of the complexes you all listed to attend tonight's meeting, to know that this meeting was even happening and that was an item on the agenda for tonight?
I assume that's addressed to.
You invite them to the meetings.
Yeah. So I'll speak on this one a little bit. So I mean, in terms of this particular meeting, the main outreach mostly went towards the resident leadership at the 4 developments. Some of them responded, some of them didn't. It gives us a little bit of an insight as to how much more work we have to do to build those relationships. But this wasn't meant to be like a community town hall. Like realistically, given just knowing the 3 topics in terms of getting idea of the capital, the challenges with the capital project, knowing the scope of what's happening with RAD Impact, and then meeting Sheree, like the whole idea is to connect the work that NYCHA is doing with the community board. So like, I'm assuming with, with some of the challenges that Victor's brought up, or even, and I'm going to say this to the folks who are here, any challenges that you all might be facing in terms of needing a community partner. The whole idea of this is to really kind of like bring the, both of us into this. And so like, because here in West Harlem, we tend to focus a lot on community partnerships, knowing that there were challenges that involved communication issues, knowing that there's a lot of construction happening, the whole idea is really just to, one, know who the folks are here, and then, you know, start working with them so we could, one, start thinking about, you know, the capital needs of grants, especially as we look into budget season coming into the fall, and then, you know, learning how we could advocate, or at least, you know, being able to use the resources of the community board to work with Sheree so that, you know, we're also working in tandem. I'm sure there are things that Sheree is doing that, you know, benefits not only the folks at Grand Houses, but the other developments that she's covering. And, you know, there's a connection that could be had there. And so that's mostly the biggest reason why this was a little bit more insular. But, you know, we could certainly, and I'm sure Nitch is open to it, if, you know, if we were to do a joint community session in the future to try to like do something a little bit more community oriented, we could do so. But again, the main idea is to really start building the relationships, just knowing what some of the issues are have been brought to us.
I'd like to ask a question about the RADPAC projects. And I'm just curious to know whether there were or have been relocations as a result of the work that was being done and is ongoing at those various addresses.
Yeah, so there's, you know, 3 different projects here with different, well, they all had comprehensive construction scope, but they had different conditions at each site that allowed for different types of, for construction to proceed in different ways. So primarily, our first method, the first attempt we always try to do is to lead with, if we can do tenant in place rehabilitation that does not require relocations, that's often what we aim for as a baseline. That doesn't mean a resident who has any kind of disability, who has any health concern, who has any, frankly, just comfort issues with construction happening around them in place. They could still request a temporary relocation to accommodate them as needed. But then additionally, there's often a scale of work, particularly work that has to do with construction that's addressing mobility and accessibility needs in an apartment that might be more intensive, but then especially that abates hazardous materials. So, for example, a development like Manhattanville, or the age of the buildings is such that there were definitely hazardous materials. There were identified hazardous materials in multiple locations within the apartments, and they must be abated as part of this scope of work. There were temporary moves. So people actually go into a temporary unit. They sign a temporary move agreement. That's almost like a version of a temporary lease. It means that they are legally returned. Everyone goes back to your original unit. That is the term of the agreement. But it's a safety issue at the end of the day that a household cannot stay in that unit while the hazard abatement is happening. So at Manhattanville, that was required. There was no alternative.
And how is it being monitored that people are being restored to their original units?
Catherine, do you want to speak to sort of the logistics? I mean, it's quite the choreographed process.
So Manhattanville has 1,272 apartments, and currently we have about 40 furnished vacant units, which are used for temporary relocation resources for 3 general categories of condition. One, we have had about 500 units that tested positive generally for a single component of covered with lead-based paint. And our obligation under PACT is to abate, not encapsulate, but to literally remove any lead-based paint that's found in apartments or common areas. To do that work, residents have to be out of their apartments. Generally, it was 2 or 3 days. So people pack essentially overnight bags. They take their valuables, but they leave all their furniture behind in their apartments. and they go back to those units when the units are cleared for the lead. Then we have 76 4-bedroom apartments, 19 per building in 4 buildings that are designated for conversion to full compliance with American with Disability Act's requirements for accessibility. In those cases, we're literally ripping down walls to widen corridors, expand the bathroom, etc. And in those cases, we work with residents. They sign everyone signs temporary move agreements when they move out of their units, but a more detailed level of engagement, because we hire movers to come in, pack up their stuff that is taken off-site. Residents take a large, more than an overnight bag. They take whatever they need to be comfortable in the furnished apartments because they're out generally 2 to 3 months while we do the renovation in these apartments. And we're in the midst of doing the second building. We've completed the first 19. We're in the midst of doing the next 19, and we'll finish all 76 by the end of the year. And then they go back. Then there's a third category, when the renovation is done, they move home. And they're given access to the apartments. They can always go in and see the renovations are moving walls, but it's nothing, it's not lead-based paint at that point. So people maintain keys to their apartments. They can go in and see the renovations. We in fact schedule tours for people to see what's happening. And then the third category is special accommodation, people who have health issues that prevent them from being in the apartments for an in-place rehab. Usually it's for chronic chronic condition like asthma, but we have people who have, they're in cancer treatment. There are a variety of reasons why people can't be in the apartments while the renovations are done. We schedule them to move, and that third category, that's the residents are coming to us asking to move.
And the resident lease.
Essentially, it's the same arrangement. It's essentially the same arrangement. They sign a temporary move agreement. They leave their belongings behind in the apartment. They pack up just what's necessary to, be able to function while the work is happening in their apartments. And even people who do special accommodation, they maintain keys to their units, and they'll go back and check on the work, even if they can't be there during the day while the renovations are happening because of dust, et cetera.
And residents maintain, an active lease to the original apartment, right? So the question of, do we know if they go back? How do we track if they go back? The lease and the subsidy is all attached to that household and that original apartment. So it's all pretty meticulously tracked. NYCHA's leased housing department, who manages our Section 8 program, oversees this. There really is no path for someone to stay in the temporary move apartment that they've been temporarily moved to. They all do and must return to the original apartment. That's where their lease is.
Can I piggyback off that? What's that? St. Nicholas houses. They're I don't know. I believe they still Section 9.
That's right. They're doing they're doing similar work, but it's still Section 9, comprehensive modification.
Now, what's transpiring is that the tenants there, they're in temporary apartments, but they're telling the tenants they can stay in the temporary apartments that they're in, which I don't understand why they would want to stay. But what's happening in St. Nicholas is that the apartments are smaller, and what they're doing, the tenants who are in temporary apartments, they're requesting to stay because the apartments are larger. So I don't understand the gist of that. And
we can find out the specifics. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
And the temporary apartments, the people who are in the temporary, they put them in Grant, whatever.
Right.
Some of them are the worst people in the world, and they're coming in and adding to confusion too. So I don't understand the gist of how temporary tenants can come into other complexes. They didn't take care where they took it in their own, complex, and they just added to confusion to where we're at as well. So
Yeah, that's noted. it is a common strategy, and I'll note that this is outside of the purview of what the real estate department, my department, works on. But it is, and we understand that there are often issues, challenges associated with this, but it is a common strategy in NYCHA's Section 9 portfolio to temporarily move people for various types of emergency or non-emergency construction work to neighboring developments on a temporary basis. The sort of, at the end of the day, the thing they're looking for is the availability of vacant apartments, which is that are in proximity to people's homes, schools, jobs, and home developments. I could find out the specifics of what may be happening with the St. Nicholas comp mod relocations, but I will say in both the Section 9 and Section 8 program, the question or the issue that you pointed to is something we have to navigate. Both in Section 9 and in PACT Section 8, we're all subject to right sizing under HUD requirements, meaning that the household composition of a given household must meet the household size requirements, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, based on the composition of that household. Temporary moves under PACT also have to comply with right sizing. Long term, in both PACT and Section 9, everyone has to comply with right sizing. But it can be complicated in the course of temporary moves because sometimes availability might mean, maybe someone, it's uncommon, but maybe someone is moving to an apartment temporarily that's larger than their original apartment, but they are not, at least in the PACT program, not allowed to stay. The more common condition, though, I will say, is in a temporary move, somebody's actually moving to a smaller apartment than they live in, because we have a lot of folks that are in underoccupied apartments, meaning it's like 1 or 2 people in a 3-bedroom. There is a possibility in any PACT project that, at least for your temporary move, you may have to be in the correctly sized apartment for your household. But the short of it is that it's a rule that is HUD required and must be enforced across our entire portfolio. We don't do it at PACT sites permanently unless we meet certain thresholds, like a certain level of occupancy, and we wait till construction's completed. So there's no right sizing at our PACT developments during the construction period.
Thank you for that.
No, thank you. It's a great question, and it's complicated across different sites.
I have one more question, and that are you aware of the community benefits agreement that Columbia signed when they developed the campus up here on 125th Street, and the fact that several $1 million of unallocated money is currently in a fund in order to develop programs in the various projects within this district. And has anybody thought about reaching out to the community board, or who administers that fund? The
West Harlem.
West Harlem Development Corporation, to try and tap into to some of those funds.
I don't know if those are programmatic or capital dollars. Brent, this might be something we bring back to.
They're programmatic. They're not. Okay. They're not capital dollars.
We should bring it back to Brian, Brent, and see, the history there. But I would, generally say, if there's funds available, we're always looking for opportunities to fund programming.
And it's a pretty significant amount of money, as I recall. It's several $1 million.
No, I think Alex Zablocki from the Community Fund for Public Housing has been interested in tackling CBAs, because he's looking at Red Hook and some. I think there was another location in Queens, but I think they're right. Like, I think between Brian, if they could bring in Alex Zablocki, I think there might be something there.
Because it is money that needs to be allocated. So
is Donald? Apologies. Is Donald Notice on the call?
He was before. Still.
I think he was involved in the community benefits agreement. Maybe he had some insight.
But it's more programming, Catherine, it's more programming. It's up to the tenant associations to come up with different ways to do that. I haven't seen a lot. I know they've spent some of the funding, but not much. We might get some community coordinators maybe to help out with something like that. You know, you
Yeah,
could use
absolutely. Yeah, I think at some point, I know that the tenant association leader here is aware that funds were allocated to Manhattanville houses. I think for a long time, there was some hesitation about spending the money because they felt a lot of the priorities should be funded by somebody else. Or, you know, that the NYCHA or property management company should be covering a lot of their priorities and they didn't want to waste the money. But I think it would be a great opportunity for them to meet with somebody else to help them imagine a project that would be worthy of the funds.
Agree.
Do people have any other questions?
Catherine, I have one other question for you. In terms of Manhattanville, I'm trying to just picture this. Are there water tanks on the roofs of the building that supply water for the buildings?
There's a single water tower on building 5 and then underground water supply lines that there's a single point of contact to the water main. It's 133rd Street. It then is pumped up to the tank, and then there's underground distribution lines to feed the other buildings. We, through a gravity-fed system, one of the improvements that we made was to install bypass pumps in the basement of every building. So if for some reason the tank has to be out for some extended period, we can maintain the pressure and push water straight from the main into the other buildings without the use of the tank.
Is your company responsible for the inspection of the tank around Legionella? I asked that question.
Yes.
Okay, because you know the ruling has changed. And we have a building across the street from us here. We're still dealing with Legionnaire's disease there. And that was just internally, that wasn't even a roof tank. So I just want to make sure that we're in compliance with those issues.
We drain the tank on a regular basis, clean it, have it inspected every year.
All right, thank you.
All right, so thank you so much. We really appreciate your taking the time to present to us tonight, and I have to say that this was a really interesting and helpful presentation. So thanks so much.
Thank you for having us. And I'm also going to put my contact information in case anyone wants to reach out to me about anything constituent related as well.
Okay, thank you.
And can I just piggyback? We were supposed, grant houses, well, 430 was supposed to get the doors issued. I spoke to Hannah from Michael Lash's office, and she had reached out to me. We were supposed to have our doors in on May the 13th. Those doors never arrived because the superintendent was replaced, and now they have to find an alternate vendor. So what I like to know is when would this new superintendent going to follow up on those doors?
So I can absolutely look into that, and I can get if CB9 would be willing to send me your contact information, I can get back to you personally regarding this.
Well, you can send it to me and Mateen. Oh, I'm sorry. You can send it to me, and I can forward it on. So I'm happy to do that.
These doors are very much needed, and it's messing with my mental health.
Is it the whole complex or just your building?
The whole complex, but I have to advocate for where I live.
Oh yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah, Teresa is on our committee, so I'm happy to pass anything along to her.
That's good.
All right, so thanks again. Really appreciate it.
Good to see you all again. Feel free to reach out to us, and we're always happy to appear or answer any questions.
We will.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Hopefully they'll be at that meeting on the 17th of this month at
Of
the.
the Night in Your Neighborhood.
Yes,
They
'cause
definitely
I will be there with bells on.
Yeah.
So all the big wigs will be
There's a
there.
specific
Yes.
point to have
I
all
will
the
be
big
there.
wigs.
Where's that meeting gonna be?
Excuse me?
Where's it gonna be?
Oh,
What is it? Ethel
yeah,
Velez,
Johnson Community Center
yeah,
between
Lexington,
112
183
and 15.
Lexington Avenue.
Send that to me.
Yeah, I got you.
17th, right?
Yes.
Nigel's a hard act to follow.
Well, good luck.
They're hard act to follow, it's true, but
All right, so I apologize if we didn't finish that up a little sooner, but.
No worries.
Okay, so the next presentation we have is from URI, the urban, help me here, Urban Resource
Yes.
Institute. Sorry.
Sorry.
I always think of University of Rhode Island when I hear URI. At any rate, this is a project that came before the board last year. As I understand it, it's an as-of-right project, and I don't want to steal anybody's thunder by describing it too much, but there was a letter of support that was issued by MCB9 in support of this program that involves supportive housing at two locations on 129th and 130th Street between Convent and Amsterdam Avenues. And I will not say anything more about it.
No worries, no worries. Well, thank you all so incredibly much for making time for us on this agenda. You have the full team here, so what I would love to do quickly is do a quick round of intros, and then I will pass it to Charlie, who's going to talk about the project. My name is Samantha Cardenas. I am the Senior Director of Government Affairs here at the Urban Resource Institute. Charlie?
Hi, Charlie Carroll, Senior Vice President of Asset Management at URI. I'll pass it over to Nat.
Good to see everyone. Nat Fields, CEO for URI, Urban Resource Institute.
And then we also have, I'll pass it over to Christine Chisholm from, who's our development consultant.
Hi.
And, yep, sorry, Christine.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Christine Chisholm. I'm development consultant for URI on this project.
And then if we can have Ben Stark and then Joseph.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see everybody. I'm a affordable housing attorney here in the city, zoning and land use and affordable housing. Thank you.
And hi, I'm Joseph Moyer. I'm an associate principal at Magnuson Architecture and Planning firm here in the city that substantially does a lot of affordable housing and supportive housing.
And lastly, Karen Budrum, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Karen Budrum with the Urban Resource Institute, and I am the project manager.
Thank you, thank you. All right, Charlie, I'm going to kick it to you and Nat.
Yeah, so thank you everybody for the time. We have some exciting updates on our project and what we're looking to accomplish. I'm first going to move it over to Nat on the next page to talk a little bit about URI.
Great. It's good to see everyone. I'm going to be brief. We can go to the next slide. We're no stranger to CB9. URI's been around since 1980. And of course, we're charged, excitingly so, to end domestic and gender-based violence. And we do this by carefully partnering with putting the client at the center, carefully partnering with the community, and working in a variety of ways to end domestic and gender-based violence. I want to say it's been about 45 years, and one of our first projects was right at Harlem Hospital's Women's Pavilion in 1980, where the city was moving away from running its work with domestic violence, and we entered the scene and actually started doing work in domestic violence right on Harlem Hospital's grounds. And since that time, we've been working to address the issue of ending DV and homelessness in a variety of ways. And when you think about the problem, we understand that domestic violence is going to impact 1 in 4 individuals, 1 in 4 women, 1 in 9 men. So it's all over the United States. It's right there in CB9. We've been engaging this issue for those 45 years. So a lot of our work is around prevention. So we're in some of the schools in CB9. We have the opportunity to work with those in high school, as well as those in elementary schools. And then we have our residential portfolio. On any given night, we house safely about 4,000 individuals in one of our sites in New York City. We work with another 30,000 people in terms of our non-residential portfolio. And we consider ourselves partners to the community and to city government, constantly looking at how we're doing in addressing these issues. And from a residential perspective, how do we provide a safe space for when someone is ready to need, whether it's domestic violence or experiencing housing instability. So as you can see, since we have just under about 620 units on any given night, we're working across the city. Our largest population in any of our residences are children. And again, our goal is to safely house individuals, particularly children, men, women, and of course their pets. If you don't know about us in the community, that's a good thing, because that means our residences have been operating quietly and safely in CB9. And hopefully you've seen us in terms of increasing awareness. I'm going to stop here because, believe it or not, the Samantha and Charlie have the more exciting opportunity to talk about the project specifically. So Charlie, who's up next?
I am. So just to give a little background, so our property is 130th Street, and we wanted to give an update on that. The original proposal there was for transitional housing for 84 units for 84 families. And our final design, which you approved, was 91 units for 91 families with children. And we are actually on pace to complete that in March of 2027, maybe even a little earlier. So that project is moving along very well on 130th Street. And we're very proud of the work that we've done there and looking forward to a TCO in March of 2027. If we go to the next, and the reason we're here tonight is part of our project was one building on 130th Street, another project on 129th. And when we came in front of Community Board, we originally had proposed 84 units. And then we were able to, with City of Yes, realize 102 units. So originally we thought we were doing 68 studios, 14 one bedrooms, and 2 bedrooms. And then with City of Yes, we were looking at 67 studios, 28 ones, and 7 2 bedrooms. And now with the new BSA rules and rulings that have come out, we're actually proposing 183 units. And one of the things that we heard in our meetings with Community Board was we'd like to see they understood our supportive side for permanent affordable housing for survivors of domestic violence, but also a real need for more 2 bedrooms for the community and more 1 bedrooms. So in this proposal, we'll be looking at 55 1 bedrooms and 59 2 bedrooms is what we're proposing. Those are our estimates, with the remaining 69 to be studios. So Sim, if you want to go to the next. And this is just a photo of where the 129th Street building will go. This was obviously in the winter. We got some snow. And this was when 130th Street was not topped out yet, but was under construction. We are now in the interiors of 130th Street and some roof work that we're fully, the siding is done, and we're moving forward. All of our windows are in. But on 129th Street, to orientate, we are basically on either side of us are warehouses. And we'll be looking to put the new affordable housing project there. You can go to the next. So some great questions came up in our discussions and talking about when we're going to bring survivors of domestic violence back to the community, what would be impact? And we wanted to be able to show some of the data, and I'll pass to Sam for this.
Thank you so much, Charlie.
Yeah.
The National DV hotline receives about 1.8 million calls a year. We know DV exists across New York City, Manhattan, CB10, is ranked number 9 in highest intimate partner fatalities across all of New York City. And, you know, Nat said it best, 1 in 4 women are survivors, 1 in 9 men. And so when you look around the people on this call, at least 1 or more people have either been affected or know someone who has been affected by domestic violence. And so with domestic violence being the leading cause of family homelessness, we are building housing for those people. And so we wanted to share some of the precinct level data where Community Board 9 spans over. And so this specific project is really permanent, supportive, and affordable housing. And so what that means is for the section that is supportive housing, that is focused specifically for survivors of domestic violence and their families. So these residents will have access to on-site services that include economic empowerment, workforce development, case management. Charlie likes to say rent is often a clinical issue, right? So if someone is behind on rent, that means that there might be something going on that they need support on. And so for us, being able to provide that support on site is critical. And some questions about security came up. So there will be on-site security 24/7. We do safety planning, crisis response. We do legal advocacy. We were one of 4 organizations across New York City who was chosen to do legal education and advocacy through the New York City Council. And I think that really speaks to URI's expertise and what we're able to offer our residents. Back to you, Charlie.
So the key features of supportive housing is it's permanent and affordable. The tenants do hold leases, and they typically pay about 1/3 of their income in rent. Like we said, we're going to have the on-site support services. The building will be owned by a single-purpose entity of URI, so it's owned by a nonprofit organization. Our target population is survivors of domestic violence, their children, and their pets. And then the community impact is we're taking a vacant lot that's been there for a long time and converting it into the very needed affordable housing for this part, which we're really excited about. The other benefits is improved health outcomes. Stable housing begets more regular health care, more regular mental health care, more regular wraparound services. It is more cost effective to have affordable housing than to have shelter, and it provides an opportunity and stability for the families and the children. You can go to the next. These are just some different statements that have been made about affordable housing for domestic violence survivors, their families, and their pets. And they kind of speak for themselves in, you know, our goal is to be able to ensure that families can live where they grew up if they choose to, and that they can be in a place that's safe, clean, and it's a place for them to be able to thrive. Those wraparound services are really the cornerstone of that work with that. And now I'm going to push it over to Joseph, who from MAP Architects.
Hi. As Charlie said, we're really trying to bring as many affordable units to the neighborhood as we can here, and boosting the unit count from the 102 that is as of right through the city of Yes up to approximately 183 units. Next slide. So one of the first things we did was we really wanted to look at the neighborhood, and with the BSA city charter changes, look and see what we thought would be a massing for the site that fit in with the neighborhood. And as you can see here, the neighborhood has quite a number of very tall buildings, and what we're proposing is fits kind of right in with all of the NYCHA housing campuses and the new developments that have been built in the area. The Vanderwater, the Claremont Hall, and the newest building right next to the Columbia campus. Next slide. Thank you. So zooming in a little bit here, we have the massing itself. So as Charlie mentioned, on either side of us, we have warehouse buildings. So what this does is allows the building really to be a four-sided structure that we're really designing all four sides. But in particular, the side facing us here that is in shadow with the kind of sloped roof. That, while it's a lot line for the tax lot, it is not for zoning. And so that, while on a typical building, we would likely see very few windows there because this is a larger zoning lot. We can treat that facade much more like a street facade. And so it'll be much more animated. And I think we'll see that in the sketches coming up. Next slide.
Can you go back one, Sam? Sorry, can you go back one more? And then I'll pass to Ben, and then we'll fast forward.
We skipped one.
Yep, no problem.
Hi, thank you. I know we've sort of referenced the BSA concept here a few times in these charter changes. I'm sure Manhattan Community Board 9 is familiar with some of the real transformative updates to land use regulations in our city over the last 18 months. In short, the city has adopted a new charter provision process for entitlement of 100% affordable projects. This is under Charter Provision 666A. We'll sort of ignore the 666 there, but the charter process, or this BSA process, would allow certain sites owned by HDFCs to seek a waiver of bulk rules in particular. So you have to be in a zoning district that already allows residential use, but provided that you are and you're proposing a project that is 100% affordable, and which will be financed by the city, receiving city subsidy or state subsidy, then if the building can earn the support of the local community and be seen as something that is of wider neighborhood need, then the BSA has the authority and the power to waive certain zoning rules, certain bulk regulations. So that's what we're proposing as part of this phase 2 of this project, in response to what we understand to be a real need for larger unit sizing in this particular community.
Thanks, Ben. Sam, if you want to go. Yep. Go.
Thanks. Sorry about that, Charlie.
No problem.
So, as I mentioned in the previous slide with just the massing model, we got into some design here, and you can see this technically lot line wall, which has a lot of windows in it. We're locating our circulation core along this property line, so stairs will have a lot of natural light, elevator lobbies will have a lot of natural light, but in addition to that, the 2 bedrooms that are kind of on these false corners will have the opportunity to be corner units. Next slide. And I think this is the last slide. So this is just how we envision the building will look. A lot of corner units. One thing that we try to emphasize on all of our projects is large windows into the apartments. While HPD's units are bigger than what is required by code, they are still on the smaller side. And so bringing a lot of natural light into the apartments through large windows really helps to make the apartments feel larger. We're incorporating a lot of sustainable and green architecture. You can see green spaces on setback roofs. You can see solar panels on the roof. Through the city and state agencies that are financing the project, there are enhanced energy requirements. So we're going above and beyond energy code for sure, pushing towards passive house in the ways that are possible for the project. And for that, I think I'll pass it back to Charlie.
So I think we did actually pretty good. We tried to stay to our 15 minutes, and I think our next slide basically says questions. So
Does she want to just speak now?
I think it's more of a comment.
So the floor is open for questions. I have some questions, but I'm happy to defer to anybody else.
Question on your transitional housing, what, you're gonna have social workers or people there to address issues? And what would
Yes.
what would the number of people be? What's the ratio of clients to practitioners?
So on the supportive housing for 129th Street, it's a 25-to-1 ratio. And it depends on how long, what the need is for the client and their family members. So we're looking at a 25-to-1 each ratio. We currently have ESHI grant from the state of New York for 61 of those units. But with this change, we'll go back and refile to be able to get more supportive units funded by the state, with our special population being survivors of domestic violence and their children.
Do you know the industry standard for ratio of client to practitioner?
I know what our standard is. I can pass to Nat.
Okay.
I'm the real estate person, but I know that our ratios are 25-to-1 on that specific program. And I think in our shelter population, we're at that around that area as well.
I think the question
Transitional housing.
was with respect to transitional housing.
That's what I was asking about. Is that what you're referring to?
So they're both, I think, 25-to-1 in the in our part of in the transitional housing on 130th Street. Part of that work is also the housing specialists. So they have a team of folks that are working with them.
Okay.
Nat, you're on mute, Nat. Sorry.
Oh, Nat.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So on the transitional housing, it's regulated by OTDA, and on the city is managed by the Department of Homeless Services. And they prescribe the ratios 1-to-25 for case managers to clients. But remember, we work in a team fashion, so that families also being serviced by housing specialists, by social workers, and by residential aides. So based on the service plan, we'll specify the needs. Some things are mandatory, and based on the presentation of the family members, adults and children, then you have the service plan. And that includes childcare and other services. But the strict interpretations of 1-to-25 for case managers, supported by all those other team members based on the service plan.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Rhea.
Yeah, just a clarifying question. There was a 183 number for the total number of units. Then there was a 109 number. Is that the units reserved for domestic violence survivors? Or I just wanted to clarify the breakdown.
No, you're right. It would be the 109 is for domestic violence survivors and their families. And then the remaining will be of truly affordable 60 AMI or less for the community in a lottery.
Okay.
And yeah, that was.
So I was wrong.
Okay.
Did you say lottery?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just had a question about the new building. What you mentioned some of the passive house sort of proximity. What are the heating systems going to be, and what are those elements that are going to bring it close to being a passive building? Just out of curiosity.
Sure. I think it's a great question. MAP's goal is always to build passive house, and that will be our goal. But until we really get through our underwriting and the design in working with HPD, we're in our infancy stage. But our goal is to go passive house. We just completed a building in Queens, in Flushing, which was the first passive house families with children shelter in Queens. So we will be looking to do that for 129th Street. In our long-term goal is for that.
Barry, did you had your hand up?
Yes, and I apologize. Some of these are going to be questions you've answered because I joined late. For the 129th Street building, that's mid-block, right? Or is that on the corner of Amsterdam? If you can go back to the last slide you had.
Yeah, it's mid-block between the two warehouses. So it's
Right.
the two-story warehouse where the Amazon pedicabs go, and then the extra space storage is up the hill. So we're
And
right between the two.
and what's the total height of the building on 129th?
We're proposing to go 24 stories, possibly 25.
And is that with a rezoning, or is that taking advantage of City of Yes UAP, or both?
That's going to through the new BSA process to be able to get there. If we did City of Yes, we would get to the 102 units.
Got it. I mean, I have to say this is a remarkably better proposal than, what we are dealing with on 145th Street. And I appreciate that this board asked you to look at ways to generate more permanent housing, and you did that. And I think that it also, actually, to follow up on Victor's question, the staffing ratios for the transitional housing are 25 residents to one caseworker, plus then there's additional support staff not factored into that ratio. Is that the same for the supportive housing building on 129th?
The supportive housing building won't have housing specialists as they're housed, but it will have referrals. So we have an economic empowerment program that is based at 211 East 43rd. That staff can come up. The LEAP program, which we talked about, that's funded, our legal program that's funded through the city council, those folks can come as well if folks can't come down. So there is a director of social services, there's a program director, there's support staff that will be there, 24-hour security. And we have other buildings in CB9. So as we discussed, we really leverage our infrastructure as a whole. So, we have a whole facilities team. So we're on 24/7. This building will be added to our grouping, and we'll be able to respond as any other building that we have. And currently we're overseeing 27 facilities over 4 boroughs.
And will these two shared buildings have a daycare among them? I think you said.
The first building will have temporary daycare for families if they need to go out. So I would say it's not really daycare; it's a childcare component. If there was something they were needed to do, they were going to go job interview, things of that nature. The other building won't, but part of our work when we get close to opening will be ensuring that we have referral network for all of the different wraparound services that any of our tenants would need.
Got it. I just want to say thank you for coming back to us with this. We first met, I want to say, in 2024 or even
2024.
earlier.
You're right. And we said we would. We try. So, but we felt encouraged by your support. Honestly, the community board was so supportive of us. So we said, let's push, because you asked great questions 2 years ago and asked us to do something. And this is our mission as well. This is what we do.
And I would just add, so in those past 2 years, we've been involved in a really nasty fight in a very poorly conceived of plan project. And so I just want to emphasize, I feel like people might be a little primed for this, to react to this. And I would just note that, we are looking at a different supportive housing qualifying population with different needs than on 145th Street. We are looking at a design that is honestly significantly better than the proposed design on 145th Street, and a provider that we have higher confidence in and who has worked in our community for many years, none of which is true of the other project. So I know we're all a little gripping our seats here, but that is why we worked with URI on this project, to bring it to where it is. And, and so I just want to say thank you. And I really appreciate you guys coming back to us with this.
Thank you for the time.
Yeah, you said that the building is owned by nonprofit. Is there, who's the nonprofit owners there? Oh.
Yeah, so Urban Resource Institute, it'll be a subsidiary of URI. It'll be a Housing Development Fund Corporation, but that URI will be the owner.
So
I see 2 more hands. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Tiffany, do you want to ask your question?
Yes. I appreciate that you all mentioned that people from the neighborhood should be able to remain in the neighborhood that they grew up in. So I was just curious to know if you had any data on the percentage of the residents who are from either West Harlem, East Harlem, Central, Northern Manhattan, or just Manhattan in general. Thanks.
From a domestic violence perspective, from a survivor perspective.
So folks who I'm not really sure how you would collect this data, if they're people who grew up here or if people who've been living here for a long time. But yes, folks who are residents of the shelter who, as I said, are from any of those neighborhoods I just mentioned.
And maybe you could use your existing sites today if you, as like a benchmark. If, I mean, obviously no one knows the future for unbuilt project, but your current population.
Yeah, so currently, and I'll for our DHS sites, the goal of DHS is always to leave families where they were from. So we do see that with folks coming back. We do have a significant amount of people that are in a DHS site as well that are survivors of domestic violence. And they may have been in an emergency domestic violence shelter and then moved over to a DHS site. It is a little unique in on the DV side, you usually leave your area until you're stabilized and then come back. But by looking at the data, and I know Sam, if you want to pull it back up, of the impact of domestic violence in CB9 or specifically the two precincts, we know that folks would like to come back to the neighborhood and be able to do that. So they may have left because of what was happening and being able to come back. So our goal is to be able to do that. One of the hardest populations to find permanent affordable housing for are single survivors of domestic violence. It is hard to find a single person affordable housing to live in. So one of our focuses here is our 61 units that we currently have slated were in studios so that they would be singles that would be able to do that. And our goal is to be able to continue to do that, but also serve families as well.
Great, thanks.
So this just gives an idea of complaints between the two precincts year over year. So, we're looking at in 2024 between the two precincts over 1,587 or 1,587 complaints of domestic violence. And then the different radio runs in relation to that as too.
I also can work with our social impact team to pull number of residents by zip code, and I just want to double check with that with legal because there's a lot of confidentiality to keep our survivors safe. So let me take that back and follow up with David and Menton if that's okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Ewan,
Hi. Tiffany already asked one of my questions, but I also have a second question and also a comment regarding the complaints. You're basing the needs on the number of complaints reported by the precinct. I don't think that would be a very accurate basis to determine whether or not there is a need in the community because, people move out, especially I would think victims of domestic violence. I mean, it would seem to me that it's logical that they wouldn't necessarily stay in the community, near their abuser. But it's neither here nor there. To follow up on Tiffany's question, I would also like to know the ratio of individuals requiring supportive services across the board, not only victims of domestic violence, but all the other sectors that we're dealing with, people who are severely mentally challenged and require supportive services, or people who are dealing with, some form of drug related illnesses. Do you know what the ratio to the general population is in District 9? Because I can understand what is the attraction of Hamilton Heights to this supportive housing, sector. Why do you always end up here? What is the attraction? And how do you determine the need? And if there is a need, what is the data? What percentage of this community require these services? And I know this is not a politically, correct question, but I'm tired of it.
It's an important question, and I can also take that back and follow up via email along with the social impact by zip code and check into the 311 calls and the other mental health related calls associated. Let me get back to you on that, Ewan.
Because these are city-owned property that could be developed, as I put in the chat, for my auntie or cousins who are hardworking and live in studio apartments.
These are not city-owned lots, Ewan. These are privately owned lots that they purchased.
Whatever, city-owned or development. What is the attraction to Hamilton Heights that, your developers of supportive housing and, it's not really permanent affordable housing. It's all supportive housing. I wish we would just say that.
Well, Nat, do you want to go? Sorry, I see you.
No, Christine, you want to weigh in before I go?
I just wanted to say that, 40% of the units are not supportive, and that those are lottery units, and that they would, they really are geared toward people like your auntie and your cousins who are at that income level, and that is exactly who would be the right appropriate people for those units. So we do feel like we are trying to bring as much truly affordable housing to people who need it in that community.
In my mind, it should be 40.
We are meeting the city's requirement under their supportive housing projects.
The city is messing up this neighborhood. That's all I can say. And just one last, just all that the community board has encouraged this, not only one, but they've come back with two. And the community board has supported an increase in the number of housing. And we're looking now at a 25-story building, which is not typical of Hamilton Heights. I would like my nieces and nephew to see some positive role models within the district. And that's all I have to say.
And they're wonderful questions. I think part of Sam will bring some data to show this, that victims of DV are working people, and I think over 60 to 70% of our individuals have income. So they're working New Yorkers as well. Charlie's point about the challenge with zip codes is that many people who are seeking safety won't generally go into the same zip code on the domestic violence side. So what we've been doing I've been doing this for about 30 years. What we've been doing is building systems throughout the New York City area, and of course some of the neighboring counties, to help increase safety for women, children. But they are working. Some of them are your aunties. Violence doesn't escape any family, any race, any gender. And some have very good jobs. So when we say supported housing, we're just really saying that we're going to have additional support to increase safety and resources. And many of these individuals are going to still be working, still engaging in productive role model behaviors. This is something that they've been engaged in, and it happened to their family member or their child. And based on our data, it's prevalent in New York City, and that's why you see us standing up more services rather than less. Remember that the hotline answers about 100,000 calls of victims of domestic violence each year. our shelter space only counts for about maybe about 4,000 to 5,000 individuals. So there are many other types of services besides housing that we're engaging outside of housing. But housing is an important part from an emergency perspective. When you hear somebody's murdered in New York City, 50% will be women, and and a disproportion will be women of color. So prevention, engagement with law enforcement, 70% of people won't go to law enforcement. So our numbers are probably even lower than being reported. It's easy to report law enforcement numbers because of concrete numbers that we can go to, but many communities don't even involve PD when it relates to DV. So the takeaway, it's in our community. It's been a scourge throughout New York City. And here, many of our residents will be working, and for support, we're providing additional services so they can stay safely housed.
I have a couple of questions about procedure, but before I ask those, thank you for the presentation. But can we also get a copy of the written presentation, and perhaps with a more detailed breakdown on the units? It's not clear in my mind what the breakdown is on the 40% of lottery units that you were talking about, which I think is going to be of great interest to all of us. With respect to procedure and the new charter amendments that Mr. Stark, you were talking about, I mean, I will tell you up front that I'm basically aware of them. I am not aware of the details of these applications that are going to BSA. Generally, I'd like to know what the time. Well, I'd like to know, first of all, what it is the URI would like us to do at the end. What the time clock is here, and whether there is and what the community board's role is in the 666A procedure. Are we entitled or required to hold public hearings on this? Are we required to make a recommendation within a certain period of time? What is the procedural? What's the procedure here? If you could give us an outline of it.
Sure. So the first thing I'll say, which is really neat, this is a new amendment to our charter. It's a new entitlement process at BSA, and based on the initial conversations that we've had with the Department of Housing Preservation and Development and with the Board of Standards and Appeals, this may be the city's first project to go through this process, the absolute first. So it's something that we're proud that in communicating with city officials that they said that this was checking a lot of the boxes of what they wanted to see for a sort of, I wouldn't call it a pilot because it's on the books and there will in all likelihood be many applications to come. But as far as a first one to go through the process, they felt that this was an appropriate one to have that somewhat degree of fanfare. The flip side of it being perhaps the first one is that even as myself as a land use attorney, there's still some questions as on our end as to how long this is going to take. All the feedback we've gotten from city officials is that we should expect to be able to complete this in under a year. That much of the process is front loaded to the things that we're working on now, ensuring that the board and other stakeholders are aware of the project, working with HPD to ensure that they've approved the basics of the program, the unit mix, the general asks when it comes to the bulk waivers. But invariably, we will move further into design refining the building, and then come before the BSA following our submission to them of a formal application, plans and the narrative statements for a public hearing. Our understanding from speaking with the board is that the community board's role would be similar to other BSA processes, that you would be entitled to submit a formal recommendation as to how you as a board collectively feel about the project, and the board would be entitled, or the BSA would consider that recommendation strongly and how they feel about the application in rendering their final decision. So if, as to the question of what are we asking for from the board, our cards are on the table. We feel that this project has merit, and we're going to continue to work with you and come back if there are continue to be questions, but invariably we hope to earn your formal support.
Okay, fine, but is this a recommendation? Is this a formal recommendation that we are either required or allowed to give? Is there a time clock here? Are you giving us notice of a BSA application, or?
I would call this pre-notice, because we haven't even, we have made no formal filing yet. The only things that have happened so far is a couple introductory conversations with the BSA staff and HPD, who, like I said, signaled that they felt this checked a lot of the boxes. And we knew even before having those conversations that coming back to CB9 was crucial, given that CB9 would be entitled to put a formal recommendation on the record. So it's in. This is just the start, is how I would put it. That you will certainly have time and for. I would call this pre-notice. So you're on notice, but you're gonna, once we actually submit the formal application to BSA, we'll be required to have a full copy of it be sent to you. And I guess that would be the formal notice.
Yeah, this is going back to another project that came in front of us involving a 24-story building on 153rd Street that I hope you're not taking into consideration in terms of looking at the height limits of your program. It's built 14 stories above the legal limit. They filed a application for a variance with BSA. They never served us. Then they showed up at one of our Housing, Land Use, and Zoning Committee meetings to present to us. And we didn't find out till afterwards that there was a time clock ticking for us to put a recommendation in. So that's why I'm.
Oh, it's totally fair. That's bizarre for me to hear. I filed many variance applications, and it says it very loud and clear in the BSA's rules of practice and procedure that the application must be forwarded to the CB upon filing. So that's
okay.
Not good.
Thanks so much for clarifying that, Ben. I really appreciate that.
Can I just go back to one of your earlier comment, and I will provide details, but I think it is important for you to know that so there are about 71 units. Our projection right now would be what we would consider lottery units. The vast majority of those will be 2-bedroom apartments.
Correct.
Approximately 50 of the 70 we think will be 2 bedrooms, and the remainder will be 1 bedrooms.
Thanks so much, Christine. If we can have that in the presentation, we can then,
yeah, we'll break that out in there.
Yep.
Oh, terrific. Thanks so much.
And just kind of following up on Nathan Fields and David, I have to say thank you, as Barry said, to URI for coming here with this project. It's exciting to see how you incorporated a lot of the recommendations and how the project is taking on a completely different result as a consequence. I think that you have done so many wonderful things. You've come to speak with us prior to developing this project. You've taken into account the serious recommendations that the board made. You took them very seriously. I loved what you said about many of us don't know who URI is because you're very quiet and we don't see you in the neighborhood. And I think that really points to like some of the concerns that were expressed. We've had people have concerns about the way certain providers operate, but when a provider comes to us prior to even thinking about really doing a project, it sort of begins to build trust and confidence in what the provider is really interested in. And the fact that the CEO, the attorney, everyone is here, it's really, you guys deserve some credit for what you have done here, for how you've sort of taken on this process, and it looks like it's going to have a fantastic result in the sense that 55 two-bedroom apartments compared to 2 is just a really positive development, and it shows that this is sort of the other side, that the community board has a really positive effect in terms of advocating for the community. And when the community board takes itself seriously and takes the projects going on in the community with as much serious sort of consideration as they deserve, that great effects can happen. And I think that what you're experiencing now is just concern about some of what David was mentioning with the BSA, but also sort of the depiction of groups as either for or against certain things. People have a right to be concerned about their communities, and they have a right to care about what their streets look like. And I think you guys are saying that same thing. And when we work together, we build something much stronger. So I think congratulations and thank you is due to the members of the community board who have put in a lot of effort. So thank you, everyone. And I look forward to seeing some wonderful work happen. I just wanted to kind of make a comment about all of that because I thought it was important. You guys have really sort of comported yourselves fantastically. Thank you.
I actually had a question for Barry, just because I think there's also an application with the West Harlem Development Corporation.
So I was going to bring that up too, because I just got an email from Mr. Ramadan. But I'll let Barry first, because Barry, I know Barry, before you get on this, someone brought up that West Harlem Corporation does have funds available, and Barry introduced us to them. So we actually filed an application this morning with them for pre-development funds to go through the BSA process.
Yep. And that's correct. So I connected them with WHTC to see if we could take advantage of the first half, the first $10 million of the affordable housing funding there at WHTC. I was just going to ask, and apologies again if you covered this, will you guys be willing to do workshops in the community to help folks get their applications in order for the Housing Connect portal for the affordable housing units? That's something that other mixed supportive affordable housing providers in the neighborhood have done to really great effect. And obviously that was before the really crappy settlement we got with community preference being lowered. But we still would like to see that and work with you guys, because that helps address the question of, well, who gets into these apartments? Well, turns out if you prepare your paperwork and package well and accurately, you wind up with a much higher success rate.
So I think we would definitely do that, but we will also have our 130th Street building will be open, and we do have community space there, so we could hold forums there. So as the other building is being constructed, folks could go around the block and be able to fill that out. We could assist in those, and we could do that work.
No, I was going to ask, and Barry, you might know a little bit more, or in terms of the funding component. Is there anything that we should be starting to do now in preparation for when they submit filing, or should we be doing something beforehand, depending on the grant process?
A positive resolution from the community board always plays a big factor in the development court decisions. I think it helps that you were functionally referred by the community board. So, but getting that formally on paper and submitted to WHDC, I think would be helpful. Or at a minimum, you know, if if Victor or the co-chairs of the committee here indicated that if you're not able to get a formal reso done this month and there's a time gap, I think that would be helpful, yes. And, you know, so this fund, just for context, has been deployed once before to finance a building that was built in CB10, which we were not happy about because it was not built in West Harlem, but the money was returned with interest, so it's actually probably closer to 12 million. But the goal of this has always been to both develop new affordable housing and preserve existing affordable housing. There was a financing system set up for HDFC conversions. Unfortunately, there were some issues on the HPD and others side of that. But it is not purely for new development financing, if that was a question somebody had. But anyway, a letter or resolution from the community board to the development corp, you know, obviously doesn't decide anything, but would be looked at very seriously and favorably. I would say / predict.
Okay. Question. I had a question about community outreach. In the area that the building will be built, you have 2 schools in that area. Do you have a plan in place to do outreach to the 2 schools that are there, just so they know, you know, what's coming once you get there as well?
Well, we could do.
Yeah, sorry, Nat.
Yes.
No, go Nat. Sorry.
No, you go. You go, Charlie.
No, you got it. I'm sorry.
They said you should stay quiet when your team is really doing well. So go ahead, Charlie. Go ahead and finish.
We will. I mean, so we have 2 different. We'll be working with our social service teams, and as the buildings get closer, we will introduce ourselves to both. We introduce ourselves in a group. We go to community boards. We're at elected officials. We'll go to the schools. We go to the precincts. We make sure that everybody knows who we are and what we're doing. We'll also, for our projects, hold job fairs if we have open positions. Sometimes we have staff that transfer because they want to get closer to home. So we also look at that. But we'll be able to show how many new jobs we're creating, how many new permanent jobs will be there. And then also we'll reach out to those communities. We have a total external affairs team. Samantha's on the intergovernmental affairs side.
And I'm a neighbor, I have to say.
And a neighbor, sorry. So that too. And we also have a Marcom team and things of that nature. So we are a part of Innovative Urban Village, which was done by Christian Cultural Center in East New York. And we're providing supportive services to 94 units of their first phase of 394 units. They will do a total of 2,000 units in East New York. 94 will be for survivors of domestic violence, their children, their pets. And that outreach we've done specifically for clients. But then what we also did was we provided outreach through our social media and others, and even internally to our staffs to find about other organizations that have affordable housing opportunities so that our staff could even fill those things out. So we do have a mechanism to market across the community as well as internally and externally. And we would work through those items. If there's any places that you feel that we should be as well, that's what we would do. But we'll do job fairs in the neighborhood. We'll do different things in the neighborhood.
Right, you answered part of my second question that was job related to. We often have buildings that go up in the area and we see people from other communities come in that take jobs that, you know, not even skilled sometimes, that people in the community could get, and they ask us about that. Why can't I get that job? You know, might be a flagger, it could be something that's not totally skilled. So we're looking forward to that as well. Thank you.
Yes, and we'll also work collaboratively with the contractors to make sure that there's local hiring during that process as well.
Great.
So as I was saying earlier, I did get an email from Mr. Ramadan saying, if there's any way that you could get some form of support from Community Board 9, that would be helpful. So just backing up with Barry, but I literally got it at 8:19 as we were on. So we submitted this afternoon. We let him know we were coming here, but and they were really excited because we didn't, they're not supporting our 102. They're supporting us to get to 183. And that's what their charter is to do. That is why they were built that way. So that's really what we're asking for them to do is to support those steps. And we also proposed a reimbursable model so that we would pay that section, give them the bills, and they would reimburse us for that. So it goes specifically to this project, and it pays for the specific steps that we need to do that.
Well done. Yeah, no, I would say just so we could help you a bit on that. If it's possible to receive some of the similar scope of work that was included from the previous letter, things that we could kind of move over to the new letter, just so that we're explaining exactly what the changes, what we're supporting, and then
and be happy to also, I can send to the two chairs the what we submitted to West Harlem as well.
Right on. Yes, please.
So Sam and I will get all of that together tonight and tomorrow.
Absolutely.
I know we're coming to, and I just want to address the person that spoke before about the involvement with the community and our work and building trust. Thank you for that. Charlie alluded to the work we are doing in East New York in that community, and it's such a different project when the community is very involved, not something happening to them, but something they're planning and leaning in on. And it helps us really develop, each community is different, develop in line with the community needs. So I recognize that a lot of these jobs, working on community boards, sometimes could feel thankless. But no, we appreciate the questions, the respect, the knowledge that you present there, and looking forward to partnering with you to really drive safe and innovative housing in West Harlem.
Thank you so very much.
Yeah. So any other questions, comments?
All right.
Yeah, thanks so much. You've given a lot of your time. We should say that Bettina and I met with most of the team on Monday, and they were very generous with their time. And I think we all kind of agree with what Andres said. So we really do appreciate your coming here and really spending the time to answer are probably questions you hear over and over again, but it's greatly appreciated.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, folks. My contact information is in the chat, and we will be in touch. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks so much.
Thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you.
Much.
Have a good evening.
Likewise. Right on. Right?
Where they're going about it is on point.
Well, when you work with the community, that's what happens.
Yes.
I like that. So we have one action item, and in the interest of time, I'm going to move that up, if that's all right.
Yeah. Although we should talk about what we're going to do on this item in terms of trying to get something out.
Yeah, I mean, I think as long in terms of their building, the great thing is we don't have to like reinvent the wheel with the letter of support. We can kind of go with what's already written with a few adjustments. And then I think on their end, if they're able to give us the specs, then we should be able to move that forward.
Okay, but is this committing us in terms of BSA?
It just lets the West Harlem Development Corps feel better about granting them a little bit of extra funding.
Okay. I mean, is that the sense that we should probably get a sense of that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the overall question. Like, how's everyone feeling about, an updated letter that we could send to the West Harlem Development Corps?
And being that you guys are new, you need to know what transpired 2 years ago so you could bring it forth. So then it's everything's under one umbrella.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, we have the letter from last time,
Mhm.
February, so we can incorporate that and then just add on to
The new
the
specs.
WHDC stuff.
Yeah.
And we
Kinda
can
what I'm-
thank them for taking our advice in the first letter.
Yes.
Make sure all the names of all committee members are on that and send it to certain people.
Yeah, and to HPD.
All right, so do we need a formal motion to proceed in the?
Is there a time frame here they want it right away or?
They- The time frame would be helpful. It's probably less about BSA because they haven't even filed anything. But
Right, but
I would move that the community board pass a resolution really doing both, specifying the parts that we're happy about and the parts that we want to make sure that they hold up what they've told us tonight, so on hiring, on housing, marketing, and assistance on application, on staff levels and everything, like put in writing what we heard here tonight and what is the basis for us, feeling comfortable to support it. But then, give them their plaudits for going about it the right way and the way that we wish other people would go about it. And, toot our own horn with the fact that because they worked with us, they got 80% more housing or whatever you want to say. Like, this is almost as good as it gets from a community board perspective for this kind of thing. This was, for those who don't have the context, this was they originally came to us partly to talk to us about the environmental remediation they had to do. This site was a brownfield site that had a lot of chemical and oil soil contamination, and they are paying many millions of dollars to completely excavate and remediate the soil, like down to the bedrock, and remove an enormous amount of harmful contaminants from our community, and have a mitigation plan for dust and other things that we talked to them about 2 years ago. And from this brownfield site that has hosted nothing productive or positive for the community for decades since its original use shut down, we are now going to get 180 something units of housing, 100 and whatever of which will be supportive, and the rest will be mostly 2-bedroom. This is a really, really, really good outcome, and it's a better outcome than what they walked in here proposing 2 years ago, and that's because of the board.
That's what's up.
Can we just be clear amongst ourselves as to what concessions we want to have in this letter, so we're not scrambling to try and figure out what we...
Sure.
So, I believe what they said was it 70?
It's 71 in the lottery.
71 lottery units.
109 maybe, right? That was the 109, was it?
It was 109 BP and then it was 183 total, so 374.
Oh, maybe. It was 60-40, so 183 units total.
Mhm.
Right. So 60-40 on the supportive and lottery.
Okay, and of the lottery units, she gave a breakdown on 2-bedroom.
55.
Yeah, she said around 50. A majority of those would be 2 bedrooms. So she said.
Yeah, 59
something like
2-bedrooms,
50
55 1-bedroom.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, and
then
then
it was
59 two-bedroom total.
55 1-bed, 59 2-bed, 69 studio.
Yeah.
The 100.
And I think about 50 of those, she said.
Actually, I guess I asked her to send the breakdown
Yeah,
too,
you
so
did.
hopefully that will
Yeah.
happen as well.
Yeah, it's 179.
Yeah, none, and I have them committed for workshops, for applications. Thank you, Barry.
Commitment to local hiring.
I would probably, if we're gonna do local hiring, I'd probably add the NYCHA component, because NYCHA has their own economic development arm.
And they're across the street.
And they're across the street.
Yeah.
So we could add them too, because they're like the specific. Anytime you need NYCHA residents, this is like the specific group of folks that you go to. They'll typically do the Section 3. Everybody knows them for Section 3, but
Okay, but they didn't.
Yeah.
Did they didn't commit to that. I mean, we can put it
We-
in the
but
letter.
we
as
can
well.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
no one mentioned it, but there's a pet component, and I know.
No, they did mention it.
They
did.
No, they did mention it, but nobody mentioned, do we want to make sure that there's some
Restrictions on the type of pets.
Yeah, either restrictions or just some, guidelines on having pets.
Yeah,
That was one
eliminate
of the
the pit
recommendations
bulls.
I made to include an interior courtyard.
Right, that was last time, right?
Yeah.
I remember that.
I don't
That
know
was
if they
you,
followed
wasn't
up
it?
on that.
Yeah, they didn't say anything tonight about extra special things for pets, but I know people will mention it, so. Being sure
That's a
that it
good
gets
one.
cleaned up if outside
Yeah.
and space for the pets to have fun.
Well, they had some sort of like
A dog
trees.
run or something.
Yeah, well, there's a
Yes,
common
space,
yard
so
between the two buildings.
Maybe they
which
can
they
have a
didn't
green
talk
space for the
about.
pets
Right.
inside the building.
Maybe that's what.
That's true.
Roof or.
So is there anything else, Barry, did we leave anything out that you remember in terms of concessions?
We got assistance for local applications, we got local hiring. We should put in staffing. That's not a concession. I'm not framing it as a concession, but they did make representations about their hiring levels and staffing levels in terms of both caseworkers and then additional support staff beyond caseworkers. So I would just like us to record that as something that they represented at this meeting.
Yeah, but were they talking about the supportive component or the transitional?
They were talking about both. The transitional component has additional support staff to find them permanent housing. The supportive housing component will not have those housing specialist support staff because they're in permanent housing. And so
They said there would be 1 to 25 ratio in the supportive, and the rest would be neighborhood providers that they were establishing connections with. That was my understanding.
the neighborhood providers were childcare specifically, I thought. Maybe I'm
I
wrong.
thought it was more than that, but I guess we didn't know.
Clarify that. Was the 1 to 25 in the transitional or in the supportive?
It was in both.
Both?
I thought.
Yeah, one is temporary, one is a little bit more permanent.
But also the security, right? We should include that as something they talked about.
But by the way, I mean, the conversation we had last night, Bettina and I, the report that Christine gave about the incidence of domestic violence in the West Harlem community was not what we had asked them for. What we'd asked them for is some statistics regarding the kind of safety impact of their other programs, like, what was there an increase in domestic violence around these projects, because presumably abusers are looking for their families. In fact, they were talking a lot about, since this is going to be a project with a lot of children in it, that there's often shared custody, and that strikes me as being a kind of flashpoint. So I was curious to know what their experience is with all the other programs that they ran, what kind of impact those projects had on the immediate community in terms of incidents of violence and other things.
I won't get into it, David, but because I'm not going to say their locations in our community necessarily, but they're pretty close to you. Like, that's not data, but
They don't have incidents, that's the thing.
yeah, there's definitely in the southern part of CB9 and the 2-6 precinct, like there's definitely some.
Mind, and I'm on the precinct community council, and I feel like they just do their thing and haven't had, you know, unless those calls that they're getting are concerning it, but I don't, you know, I have not necessarily heard that there's big issues, and the precinct works with them and knows them, but.
Well, I think that, you know, that, listen, we have had honest, open debates about supportive housing since I've been here. And, you know, I think there is legitimate concern about what is the impact of supportive housing. And Ewan's right. I mean, we've talked about this also. Harlem is a place where these is one of the communities where these get cited more frequently than other communities. And I do think there's a legitimate concern as to what the impact is.
No, agree.
Well, I think that you generate more antipathy towards supportive housing, which is serving a, you know, admirable purpose when you sort of deny to people what they see is happening to them. Yeah. I don't think anyone's doing that, but I think, you know, it's something to keep in mind for someone like you and or anyone else.
What kind of proactive measures can we take that would, you know, we've done moratoriums on things in the past. I don't think we're going to get a moratorium on supportive housing in our neighborhood, but what are what are some proactive ways we can, you know?
I mean, some
100% affordable versus supportive.
Some proactive ways are being upfront and maybe like coming up with a list of these priorities that we're putting in this letter or reso. Put them on the website. Like, what do we care about when supportive housing is built in our neighborhood? One is the staffing ratio. Another is certain populations need higher staffing ratios than others. And you know, there is plenty of distinction within supportive housing financing laws and rules about the different types of populations that qualify. I think that operators with a track record in our community should be a big one. The fact that, like, I know some of their sites in our community from when I was chair, you would never know if you didn't know, because they are like very quiet, very under the radar. Like, you know, I know some folks who do like holiday food or toy giveaways there, but it's very low key. And I think that, like, these concerns are real, which is why you have to get into the details like we are doing. And I think that like, we know when there's an operator who has no experience in our neighborhood, who doesn't really do supportive housing as their main thing, and who, you know, is underhanded in how they go about it and completely ignores all of our attempts to receive input. Like, that's not this. And if you come to us like you have something to hide, we're going to think you have something to hide. If you come to us 2 years in advance saying, here's what we're thinking about doing, and, you know, what do you think and what are your ideas and how can we make it better? It's easier to tell us then that it's not a bad thing, because if it, you know, like, you're not hiding it. So this is just a case study in how to do it right, coming very much on the heels of how to do it wrong.
I think also that there, you know, there has been attempts and even some small successes in terms of legislative initiatives to make sure that there's a fair share of supportive housing in all communities. And we have a mayor who, you know, is much more concerned about equity than our prior mayor. And we also have studies that come out of this community board showing unequal distribution. And I don't, you know, I'm not in favor of trying to block projects like the one that just came before us tonight. But I think it's perfectly legitimate for CB9 to support legislation that will require the city to be more upfront about where they're citing their projects and more fair in the way they're distributed.
Well, in
I mean,
the,
doing one in Staten Island?
with it, well, what I was going to say
Yeah.
is that in the past we had like an HDFC forum with the community board. That was now a long time ago. But I think that having a public forum where people could voice their opinion and where people who are in charge of making these decisions at HPD could hear directly from someone like UN to sort of facilitate that communication at a sort of greater level at the city would be helpful for presentations by local providers, case studies of different approaches to how one provider approached the city, what has been the consequence, of what happens in another provider. Because I do think that you're right, like that how you approach this, and it could be legislative, but I think this also really requires a bit more of a sort of boots on the ground approach too. I mean, I think getting into the details is fundamental, and sort of debating the actual policies in a particular project, what we want. But I think approaching people on the ground is going to be fundamental for building support at a broader level. And
we have Tiffany's hand.
which I think is, yeah, right.
No,
People who deserve
it's smart. None, and if anything, because I've seen that before, where like, depending on the community, they'll try to like have something like this ahead of time, so that like when folks like URI comes in, they know what to expect.
Well, it's the right way to do it.
Exactly.
And it's the wrong way. You know how that looks.
Yeah, sounds like something for upcoming.
Tiffany, did you want to?
Tiffany?
The elephant in the room that we probably a little bit about Marcus point.
Tiffany, we can't hear
Sorry.
you.
The elephant in the room that no one's really talking about, and this is, going back to UN's point, look, this is not NIMBYism, and I personally do not have a problem with this particular project. It's just generally speaking, New York State has a right to shelter, but we don't have a right to housing. And as long as I have been attending board meetings since 2019, I cannot recall offhand a single project, perhaps the one on 145th Street with the school, that was owned by, I think it was the Boys and Glove Club, that was crazy going out of business in the 70s.
We're losing you.
Are something like they're deeply unaffordable, or they are some kind of quasi supportive housing, shelter, whatever mix. What people are saying is, what about the time when Harlem really was affordable? You didn't need a special program, you didn't need a voucher, you didn't need to apply to a lottery system and wait and hope and pray. You could move here, you could live here, you could raise a family here on even a single income or without some fancy degree and be able to raise a family here. Harlem had presented opportunities for people of all rungs of the ladder and from different academic or non-academic backgrounds to succeed, right? This is the birthplace of so many genres of music, for example. So this is really across industries. We don't really have that anymore. We don't have like, again, this right to housing. What about all of our kids who go off to college and come back here and they can't afford to pay rent here? One guy was telling me about his nephew who graduated from Columbia, who actually made it, and he is now renting a $3,000 studio in the Bronx. Or the other situation is you have college kids who are shacking up with their parents. Now these college kids are well into their 30s. They have 5-year-old kids that are playing with my kid, and you see 3 generations of families shacked up into one apartment. Or the other group that's shacking up with roommates. I think the young man who perished in that fire who was also a Columbia graduate was probably living in an apartment that was illegally converted, didn't have access to a fire escape. These Frankensteining of apartments, our veterans who go off can't afford to come back. No one's building housing for these groups of the population. This is the only thing that's presented on the table. And 40%, that's great. Okay, 40%. Why can't it be 80%? Why is that too much to ask?
That's the affordability crisis on account of which I think the city granted this mayoral administration a clear mandate to.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please speak louder. I can't hear what you're saying.
I said that's the affordability crisis on account of which the city gave the current administration a mandate to tackle in all sorts of different ways. I strongly agree with you, Tiffany, but I think in many respects it transcends what we're able to address and handle at this
I
point.
understand. I know this is a conversation that the community board can barely, can't weigh in on in any meaningful way. But this is the frustration that you're hearing in a lot of other people, is that people are forced into these slum-like conditions, right? Or they're just leaving New York. A lot of people who are moving out to Jersey or Atlanta or what have you because they can't afford to continue living here. It's not realistic to raise a family in a one bedroom, let alone a studio.
Yeah, I mean, you're touching up on one of the main reasons why public housing is really important, because you're never going to get those affordability levels ever from the private sector. Period.
Absolutely, and that's also on the chopping block with Rad Pact, right?
Yeah.
For being honest, and I was honestly really frustrated to see that there were probably 2 people in the room that actually live in NYCHA. Because I've spoken to so many people who are complaining who live in those same houses that we just referenced, that have told me they don't have heat or that there's an issue with hot water. Things are worse under Rad Pact than they were before. And corralling people, forcing people into this neoliberal BS agenda is not the solution either. They create the crisis that they then claim to be the savior to solve.
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
It's the Albany's ears.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Just to stay within the action.
Nobody wants to have all this conversation of what affordable.
But that's unfortunate.
Let's just wrap up. Let's
Yes.
wrap up what we need to wrap.
All right. Yes. Yeah. So we have one action item.
Hold on. Just to stay within our action-centered conversation that we're having before, I think the high note in which we ended the final presentation forms a welcome, albeit stark contrast to the feeling of helplessness that we felt at the very beginning of the meeting. But for this partnership to be something that is the norm rather than the exception, I think what we need, among many things, is time. And so one thing that we might want to take into account, going into the summer and then possibly at some point in September and working with other sister committees, is to think about, well, the statute of limitations and periods of review when it comes to many procedures that frustrate that kind of partnership from ever standing a chance of coming into fruition. Obviously, when special interest groups attempt to shorten statute of limitations, they do so as to manufacture a very clear set of outcomes that are not favorable to the community, that are engineered to be in favor of the very special interests that they advocate for. In the same vein, when it comes to agencies, yes, government agencies do have the ability and the latitude to contract the periods of review. As you mentioned, Dave, that this administration has been more open to notions of equity than any in recent times. And I think we should use that to review all sorts of key review periods that are germane to our work as a committee. And any statute of limitations, come up with recommendations of our own, so that when we do meet with representatives of the mayor's office, we come up with our own set of recommendations for them to look into. Obviously, we'll try to maximize our demands. We're probably not going to get what we want, but we'll at least be able to try and expand things if nothing else. And if we do that in housing, if we do that when it comes to transport, if we do that when it comes to just about all committees that are involved, we're going to have a much more community-friendly set of outcomes and policy that hopefully, if nothing else, is receptive to the feedback from the community.
Get the other community boards on board with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have your letters.
Yes. So it's a actionable item. So this is a letter specifically from Community Board 10. We ended up drafting a letter that is supporting a current push from Brooklyn. It started in Brooklyn specifically talking about deed theft. And because we know that this is not just happening in Brooklyn, we know it's happening in Harlem, not just in our neck of the woods, but in other parts. We also reached out to Community Board 10, and they not only agreed, they literally voted and sent us their letter last night.
Coming together.
Yep. So it's a joint letter supporting the efforts regarding deed theft, specifically asking Governor Hochul to enact existing legislation, enforce and expand temporary eviction moratoriums, establish citywide opt-out cease and desist zones, fully fund a right to counsel for property title fraud, and fund specialized investigative units and local oversight. Yeah. I tried to make this as common as it possibly could be, or relevant, not common, relevant to Community Boards 9 and 10. I don't think there's anything additional, but if there's anything I've missed, we could certainly talk about it. But
can this be retroactive? First of all, are there criminal charges? What are the consequences for doing this? Because it's one thing to pass legislation saying don't do that. It's another thing when there's really something punitive to prevent anyone from engaging in this, because it's really insidious. This is something that's been horrible, devastating people for many years. So some sort of criminal punishment, number one. Number two, it should be retroactive. And number three, it should even go further than being criminal and bar anyone from, for example, receiving a J51 tax abatement or any sort of benefits from the state, the city of New York.
It can't be retroactive. Criminal statutes cannot be made retroactive under the Constitution of the United States, which was ex post facto laws. Thank you. But this, I don't.
Constitution ain't what it used to be, David.
Yeah, there you go.
On the bright side, civil penalties.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, the stuff that they're trying to pass right now is mostly to at least cover the holes that existed that even allowed this to happen in the first place. Because that's ultimately the biggest thing, is people took advantage of the fact that there were gaps in processes and operations and absolutely used it to their advantage.
Is anything legit? This is what kills me, you know what I mean? It's like, oh my God.
No, it comes back into that whole, like, you know, when it comes to housing, it's not capitalism, it's exploitation, period.
That's right, that's the Knicks lost last
Who's
night.
making the
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So I mean, if there isn't,
Does somebody want to make a motion on this resolution?
So moved. Yeah.
You can still have, were there criminal charges included in it? It doesn't have to be retroactive, but at least going forward. If you steal someone's purse for $1,000, at a very minimum, that's grand larceny, right? Or larceny.
You know,
so a house, we're talking about a house here.
I don't think the problems are in criminal, you know, with the criminal statutes. They're not being enforced is really the problem. You know, the other thing that this seems to address, which is the fact that a lot of the people who are the victims of this kind of theft don't have the money to hire an attorney to do anything about it. So I think it addresses some of those gaps as well. But I don't think there's any criminal enforcement component to this resolution, because there probably is not. I mean, There are so many laws on the books about theft and about fraud. It's not that that's lacking in any sense. It's the enforcement of those laws and the ability of people without funds to secure their rights.
Yeah.
And that's what this addresses.
Yeah, I mean, part of that does involve even requiring additional resources, particularly to the district attorney's offices, who would need to have units dedicated to this. Beyond that, I'm not.
Yeah, and I guess the other important part of this is this eviction moratorium, because given the difficulty of people without funds to enforce their rights, they can be evicted from their units before there's even a determination that there was a theft, and that does seem to be a very, very significant legislative lack that this intends to address.
Are you saying that something are already on the books that's punitive to someone who?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Is it enforced?
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem, like in so many areas of criminal laws, that the laws on the books are there for people who have the privilege and the finances to enforce them, and not for the people who don't. And I think this is trying to address that inequity.
I'm not an avowed incrementalist, but I think this is absolutely the right way to go on about things. Close the loopholes, make sure they cannot be exploited, and then once we do, if the laws in the book don't appear to be adequate, we can then examine the prospect of taking things further. So I strongly support this resolution.
Is there anybody else who wants to address the resolution? Does anybody want to make a motion, Rhea? Oh,
so moved.
Oh. You're the motion person. Okay, seconded? Okay, seconded. And is there unanimous consent?
Unanimous
Absolutely.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for doing this with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, I mostly worked with some folks from Brooklyn who had already done a lot of the language, so I give them credit.
It's a happy thing when you can copy and paste.
Right on. All right. Is there any new updates on RKO? Not that I know of either. Do we have any new legislation that we're watching?
Yes, I have an update on the bill introduced by Assemblymember Taylor and Senator Clare. The bill clarifying that Health and Hospitals Corporation is in fact subject to ULURP when disposing of its real property. It passed the Assembly in a modified version. It now needs to pass the Senate. This is despite Health and Hospitals Corporation executives being out in Albany in force pushing against it. And then we will need to all be calling the governor's office urging her to sign it. So 3 cheers for Al Taylor and Cordell Clare for seeing this need and for seeing, and by the way, also the Assembly legislative staff, who are very thorough, told us, yeah, this isn't actually new law. It's a cleanup bill because it just reflects what the courts have already ruled. Yeah, the courts have already ruled, and that HHC is quite happy to just ignore. So occasionally we get good news. Today we've got like a good chunk of it, so I'm happy, and we should thank them the next time you see them for that bill, and also get ready to organize call-ins to the governor's office for her to sign it.
When's that happening, Greg? You know?
I have not yet spoken to Senator Clare about the Senate taking up the Assembly's version. I haven't also checked the Senate website to see if they've just done that already, but I will ask her.
Maybe we should share this information. Sorry to interrupt you. Maybe we should share this information with other community boards. I think it seems that others might be going through a similar issue.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we can also get them to press the state Senate to pass it on their end.
That's a great
Speaking
idea.
Speaking of that, not to add anything to our plates, however, sometime before the summer ends, one thing April and I used to do was when we were able to try to have like a group dinner, a group gathering of all the community boards and the housing chairs and all of that. And Indiana, who used to be on this board, is the co-chair of housing at CB12. She's a friend and really great. She loves us, we love her, and she's really a force. So we have a CB12, we got CB10, just kind of like our small group of boards up this way that have similar concerns, needs, and interests.
Can I call you on that?
Yeah, to help organize something?
No, not to ask you, but just to
I'm
get
happy
your wisdom and institutional knowledge. And
and I would be happy to try and help organize a dinner thing.
Yeah,
I would bet Liz would host in her backyard.
Okay.
I'm meeting with 12's chair later this week, actually.
So just start spreading the word that we'd like to, especially on the housing side. And we combined our housing, land use, and zoning, obviously, but all are welcome to the table of that realm. So.
Right on.
And it's nice to do it in an informal setting to get to know each other too. So.
That's true. Right on. Sweet.
What else you got?
developments we are watching.
Oh, there was one youth that brought up. She said that it came last year. This I guess it's another supportive housing component on 148th Street.
148th and what?
In Amsterdam?
I think so. She didn't specify.
Yeah,
That's
Child's
Child's
Memorial.
Child's Memorial, you mean?
I
Yeah,
think so.
family shelter.
Oh, that's a long story.
Yeah,
1763 Amsterdam?
yes.
Yeah, that's Child's Memorial. They owe us a community benefits agreement and some rent stabilized apartments.
Yeah.
Because that was the deal. It is not supportive housing. Last time I checked, it is just a shelter.
Shelter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unless something's changed. But in exchange for our letter of support to DHS, and Tish James really kind of screwed us on this one. But in exchange for our letter to DHS, they committed to funding a community benefits fund and to re-stabilizing and making affordable a number of apartments they owned on the corner of the same street. It was like Amsterdam and 147th or 148th. But we should have their contact info, and they were very friendly and not hard to work with. But the AG's office got in the way of the planned permanent affordable housing we had worked out to build there. So
Right on. Sweet. Yeah, because I think you just said they're supposed to come at the exec meeting.
The developer?
She didn't specify, but she said that they should be coming to present at the exec meeting. So
it's the Vedots.
The dots were the developer,
Yeah. Well, that's the name of the people. It was like Elmo Realty or Empire Realty. But we should dig up the letter we did to DHS because that specified the terms of our support.
Gotcha. Okay. Nice. Thank you, Barry. All right. Do we have any additional updates? I'm going to assume because NYCHA presented, we don't have NYCHA updates. Do we have anything on Morningside Heights Community Coalition? Aside from I know there was the release of the units, and that was the last thing I knew, but.
They have some type of event this weekend. I'll send it to you. I'll find it.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Alrighty. Do we have anything new on Till?
Just the rehabilitation, just the update we got from Elsia at the general board.
Oh, that was awesome. Sweet. All right. Then I think that's about it. Do we have any old business? Any additional old business? All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right.
Second.
All right.
And this is the last meeting of the season, so
Yeah.
everybody enjoy your summer
Yeah.
months off.
Off what?
Not that we really get to be office housing, land use and zoning.
Fun times. All right.
Have a great summer, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye, everybody.
Yep.
Bye.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, Tiffany, I'll take your help. Organizing.
Always. Sure thing. You got me.
We'll ask Liz for her backyard, that's okay.
Cool. Have a good night, guys.
Great. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you.